Good afternoon. Mr. Persico and Ms. Tyson, are all the technological things in order?
I believe so, Chairman Brink.
Yes, sir. They're good on my end too.
All right, very good. And I see Secretary LaCruz and Dr. O'Bannon on the screen. And so I will call this meeting of the State Board of Elections to order. First of all, I would request any non-participants to mute their lines. In addition to the members of the board, we have Commissioner Piper and Carol Lewis of the Office of the Attorney General participating in this meeting. I'd ask Secretary LaCruz to determine a quorum by a roll call.
Chairman Brink.
Present.
Vice Chair Dr. Bannon.
Here.
Secretary LaCruz here.
We have a quorum present. Under an executive order that expires tonight at 11:59 p.m., Governor Northam has declared that a state of emergency exists in the Commonwealth as a result of the potential spread of COVID-19, a communicable disease of public health threat. This meeting is being conducted consistent with the requirements for electronic meetings by public bodies during a state of emergency set forth in items 4-0.01 of House Bills 29 and 30 as passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor in April of 2020. Purpose of this meeting is to transact statutorily required business of the board. This meeting is being conducted electronically, and the opportunity for public comment will be provided electronically. The board will receive public comments on agenda items prior to its action on that item, and an open public comment period will be offered prior to adjournment. Individuals participating by video conference should signify their wish to speak through the conference's chat feature after they have spoken. Individuals participating by audio will have the opportunity to speak. Without objection, individuals wishing to comment will be recognized for 3 minutes and may enter written comments into the record. The items on today's agenda are similar in that they involve forms related to candidacy, but they have some significant differences as well. Mr. Nichols, can you give us an overview of these items?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity. There are two different agenda items because there are two different types of paperwork that need filed, and I think you're right in that it's a good idea for us to kind of explain that difference between the two filings. The Elect 511 form is a form that parties use to nominate formally their candidate for a general election if that candidate has been nominated through a non-primary process. This is strictly a form that is required to be filed by local party chairs, whether a district chair or just whichever relevant party chair is required there, and candidates don't have any control over what happens in those situations and whether or not the party chair files those documents. The difference here between that and the second agenda item, or I guess third agenda item on the candidate filing extensions, is that with the candidate filing extensions under 503, candidates are required to file certain documents themselves. The certificate of candidate qualification and the statement of economic interest, and they are required to file those by a particular deadline, and that particular process is fully under the control of the candidates and no one else.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nichols. Our first agenda item is requests by 3 party chairs for late acceptance of Elect 511 forms. Mr. Nichols?
Thank you again, Chairman. We do have a request from three party chairmen to elect 511 candidate nomination forms for non-primary candidates who've been nominated for the general election. All of the information has been presented in the board working papers. We do have the 511 on file with the department for each of these, but again, they were filed after the deadline of June 14th to do so. And so I think, the board is pretty familiar with this particular process, and that I think, the Office of the Attorney General has provided you all with some revised drafts of potential motions, depending on which direction you want to take. I would like to take the opportunity just for a second, Chairman, to indicate that regardless of the filings and the information provided by the political parties regarding this, the Department of Elections was very diligent in providing the parties with the information that they asked for. I don't want this to, I don't want my pushback here to influence the board's decision in any way. I just want to a certain degree, defend the staff of the Department of Elections by saying that, we provided the information that was asked for and did so in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nichols. So the elect 511 forms in question are for the 33rd House District Republican nominee, the 36th House District Republican nominee, and the 2nd House District Republican nominee, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Do the members have any questions or comments for Mr. Nichols?
I had one, Chairman. I noticed in one of the letters we received from council from the Republican Party that they had asked for kind of like additional information from Mr. Nichols. Could we please have a list of candidates who, have submitted their paperwork? That's not something that you're required to do, correct?
Not required, no, but we often do provide that on request.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions or comments? Could the staff tell me if any members of the public have signified that they wish to comment on this item?
Not that I see in my side.
Yeah, not on my side as well.
So no members of the public from either Mr. Persico or Ms. Tyson, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Very good. In that event, I'll entertain a motion to accept the elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for the 33rd House District.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. O'Bannon,
I have a motion.
gentleman will state it.
Thank you. In consideration of the requirements imposed by Virginia Code 24.2-511A, that the district party chairman certify to the State Board of Elections the name of any candidate who has been nominated by his party by a method other than a primary for an office to be elected by the qualified voters of a General Assembly district, and the date of such nomination not later than 5 days after the last date for nominations to be made, as well as the evidence that candidate David LaRock made all reasonable attempts to comply with the submission process as demonstrated by the June 22nd, 2021 letter from Mr. Chris Ashby on behalf of Delegate LaRock and the June 22nd, 2021 testimony at the State Board of Election meeting from Mr. Lee Goodman on behalf of Delegate LaRock, and the important constitutional rights associated with the party's access to the ballot. I move that the board accept the elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for the 33rd House of Delegates District. If I may, I'd like briefly to speak to that.
Um, uh, Feel free.
So I just want to say, this has been a continuing work in progress. We do have precedent from 2019 on this specific issue. And I think this is the proper motion to make. And I look forward to working with everybody to make the process a little smoother in the future.
All right, the Vice Chair has made the motion. Is there a second? All right, I'll second that motion. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll, please?
Chairman Brink,
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Dr. O'Bannon,
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, nay.
I'm sorry, repeat.
It's a no from me.
All right, the motion passes 2-1. I'll entertain a motion to accept the Elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for the 36th House District.
Is there public comment on this one?
My intention was to have public comment at the beginning of all three of these.
And I'll go ahead and make another motion if I may, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
I apologize for the length here, but in consideration of the requirements imposed by Virginia Code 24.2-511A, that the district party chairman certify to the State Board of Elections the name of any candidate who has been nominated by his party by a method other than a primary for an office to be elected by the qualified voters of the General Assembly District, and the date of such nomination not later than 5 days after the last day for nominations to be made, as well as the evidence that the candidate Matthew John Lang made all reasonable attempts to comply with the submission process, as demonstrated by the June 29th, 2021 letter from Mr. Chris Marston on behalf of Mr. Lang, and the June 28th, 2021 affidavit of Mr. Robert Kenyon, Chair of the Republican Party of Virginia's Legislative District Committee for the 36th House of Delegates District, and the important constitutional rights associated with the party's access to the ballot. I move the board accept the Elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for a 36th House of Delegates District.
it's been moved that the board accept the Elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for the 36th District. Is there a second? I'll second that motion. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll?
Chairman Brink,
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Dr. O'Bannon,
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, nay.
Motion passes 2-1. I'll entertain a motion to accept the Elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for the 2nd House District.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. O'Bannon,
in consideration of the requirements imposed by Virginia Code 24.2-511A, that the district party chairman certify to the State Board of Elections the name of any candidate who has been nominated by his party by a method other than a primary for an office to be elected by the qualified voters of the General Assembly District, and the date of such nomination not later than 5 days after the last date for nominations to be made, as well as the evidence that candidate Gina Sierra made all reasonable attempts to comply with the submission process, as demonstrated by June 29th, 2021 letter from Mr. Chris Marston on behalf of Ms. Sierra, and the June 29th, 2021 affidavit of Ms. Heather Mitchell, the chair of the Republican Party of Virginia's Legislative District Committee for the 2nd House of Delegates District, and the important constitutional rights associated with the party's access to the ballot. I move that the board accept the Elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for the 2nd House of Delegates District.
it's been moved that the board accept the Elect 511 form certifying the Republican nominee for the 2nd House of Delegates District. Is there a second? I'll second that motion. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll?
Chairman Brink,
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Dr. O'Bannon,
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, nay.
Motion passes.
Sooner or later, you
2-1.
gotta second that emotion.
I'm sorry?
Said sooner or later, she's got to second that emotion.
The motion passes 2-1. Our next item of business is extension of the candidate filing deadline under section 24.2-503 of the code. Mr. Nichols?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to 24.2-501 of the Code of Virginia, an individual that wants to be a candidate for office must submit a certificate of candidate qualification and a statement of economic interest. As these required elements are required elements of candidate filing, failure to submit one or both of the documents will prohibit an individual from having their name printed on the ballot and becoming a candidate. Also pursuant to 24.2-503, the State Board of Elections may grant an extension of the filing deadlines for the certificate of candidate qualifications and/or the statement of economic interest. Any extension granted may be only for a 10-day period of time from the time the Department of Elections sends the notice of the extension to affected candidates. If the State Board of Elections grants an extension, the Department of Elections must notify all candidates who have failed to file one or both of the documents, as that extension would apply to any candidate, not just specific candidates. At this time, the Department of Elections has received requests for an extension from candidates, and those letters are included as part of your working papers. I will point out that the letter from Mr. Mullins specifically requests an extension to file petition signatures in his search for candidacy. However, the State Board of Elections does not have the authority to extend the deadline for petition submissions.
Thank you. Do the members have any comments or questions of Mr. Nichols? Can the staff tell us if any member of the public wishes to comment on this item?
I have no public comment, Chairman Brink.
Mr. Persico?
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing on my end.
All right. In that event, I'll entertain a motion to extend the candidate filing deadline under section 24.2-503 of the code. Hearing no such motion, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public comment. Can the staff tell us if any members of the public have signified that they wish to comment on a matter not on today's agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. O'Bannon?
I don't mean to butt into public comment, but there is a citizen in the chat who asked the question, can someone speak to how these exceptions, talking about the 511s we just permitted, different from the denied exceptions in March? And I think it's pretty straightforward and has been addressed by Mr. Nichols and by the chairman. Those 511s are not from the candidates, from their respective parties, and the code gives clear authority for the decisions that we made. That is not the case for the other ones that we just did not act on. They're different kinds of forms. They are materially different.
Thank you, Dr. O'Bannon. That's a good summation of the lay of the land right now. So I can't recall if there have been any additional requests for public comment.
I have no
Mr.
request,
Seco,
Chairman
Ms.
Brink.
Tyson? I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, I have no request for public comment.
Mr. Persico? All right. Do members of the board have any additional comments?
I move,
Not, Dr. O'Bannon,
I move adjournment.
is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the board adjourn. Secretary LaCruz, will you call the roll, please?
Chairman Brink,
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Dr. O'Bannon,
Aye.
Secretary LaCruz, aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much, everyone.
We'll miss this privileged way of meeting in the future, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, repeat.
I apologize. We'll miss this privileged way of meeting in the future, I'm sure.
I know we're going to have to get used to real people. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the board and members of the public and staff for a very good meeting.